Hi, everyone. This is Loren Baker of Search Engine Journal. Welcome to today's SEJ show. With me today, I have Dan Taylor of Salt Agency. Hey, Dan, how's it going?
Hey, Loren, I'm doing good, thank you. Yourself?
Doing pretty well. Doing pretty well. So, I'd like to thank our sponsors that make today's show possible, both Channable and Wix. So, thank you, Channable and Wix, for sponsoring today's SEJ show. We're going to be discussing really communicating SEO to non-SEOs and C-suites within companies and some of the challenges and opportunities which arise when doing so. But before we get started, Dan, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. So yeah, I'm Dan Taylor. I'm a partner and head of technical SEO at Salt Agency. We're based out of the UK, but work with predominantly clients across the US, Middle East, and APAC. Being in SEO now, coming up to 10 years. I've been at Salt for 8. Historically worked a lot with travel clients, but more so in this past 6, 7 years, worked with the likes of Cloudflare, Proton, GitLab, and kind of work with enterprise level and kind of work on the strategy and technical side with them.
Nice, nice. So, really cool to be talking enterprise SEO, especially getting into next year. We have people should be planning their budgets and their SEO plans already, but being with a little bit of a turbulent economy, sometimes it's a little bit of a question mark getting into the next year. Um, Dan, when you're communicating SEO with non-SEO and C-suite, what are some of the tips that you have when doing so, especially with planning for the upcoming season?
No, that's a great question, especially with planning. I think oftentimes in a lot of organizations, especially not just across C-suite, but across most of VP level, everyone's time poor. Everyone has their own set of KPIs and objectives moving towards that bigger goal. And oftentimes SEO is trickled through as part of town hall meetings, individual internal meetings, and the actual breadth of what is achieved or what is being conducted just gets broken down into a traffic graph or a revenue graph or a lead graph. And making the reporting, especially, well, not necessarily reporting, that's probably the wrong word, making the visibility of the entire SEO program across the business more
Mm.
open, accessible, and importantly, when I say accessible, that it's not just a report monthly, something people can dip in and out to, just creates a better understanding and enables that greater visibility. So we're not just a line graph with the traffic going up or down in a year-on-year comparison, and we're not just a hot topic of conversation when the graph goes down. Um, More the wider business gets to see your success more, it gets to share in the wins more, and it also understands how the wider business contributes to it more as well.
What are some ways you recommend of doing so?
So things we've done in the past, I've held specific one-on-one kind of 10, 15-minute meetings with CMOs and CEOs, just dipping in and out of kind of monthly briefings as they do with other stakeholders, uh, as well as the standard SEO reporting, if you like, even putting together something very top level like a 4 box report. So just something very pragmatic, include a red, amber, green status, anything like that, just gives them a quick 12, 15 bullet point visibility on what is going on, and they can dip in and out as they choose.
Very nice, very nice. And usually, when you're putting together that executive level report, do you find that um, the simplified information really helps speak to the C-suite, or do they ever want to get granular after reviewing such?
I always welcome it if they want to get granular afterwards. I think having giving them the option to go granular is a big thing. I especially like it when like I said, they want to go granular because it means they're interested, they're investing what for them is a heavily important resource, which is their time, into the actual program, and they can understand things more. A really good example of that right now is AI and how basically everyone's creating AI tools. Google is obviously testing SGE. The number of C-suites, the number of VPs, even the internal sort of heads of marketing I'm speaking to, and they're asking me a question of, "Oh, what are we doing about AI?" But by AI, they're just meaning ChatGPT. They're meaning
Yeah.
Google Bard. The fact that search generative experience is coming, but is not even on their radar. So being able to kind of very quickly kind of go, yeah, ChatGPT is great. Let's not worry about that. Let's focus on that big thing coming over the hill over there. It helps just build that little bit of trust and helps them actually come away from a conversation. And any conversation they can come away from feeling like they've learned something and they better understand something, not just in the sheer chasm of, oh, SGE is coming, that's it, we're doomed, but understanding what the impact's going to be and how they can potentially mitigate that impact as well is always a
Right.
positive, and then they just invest more of their time and more interest.
Right. And with that, do you feel that that helps to set expectations or control expectations when SG finally is rolled out and we see what happens?
I think at the moment, anyone trying to set the expectation, I mean, that's something we're trying to work towards with studies ourselves, but anyone trying to put a sentence of red or even put a red, amber, green on SG for a business at the moment, it's pretty hard. But I think at least making them aware of that complexity helps. As I said, a
Hmm.
lot, oftentimes, C-level, VP level, other stakeholders only really become invested in specific marketing channels when they're not performing as well as either
Yes.
they should be or what their expectations were. And from experience, 60-70% of the time, organic can be performing as a channel, but the expectation level that the individual has of what the performance should be based on a handful of blog posts they read or what some other sales people might have tried to do during the pitch varies greatly from reality. So giving that opportunity to understand better, back to your point, it does help with expectation setting, but also lets them understand a bit more. It's not just as plug and play as some people
Hmm.
might have made it out as being. Also helps them understand they can't necessarily compare themselves to other sites, especially not just in their niche, but I in the UK we have a lot of people over the years have said to me, "Oh, well, the BBC do this," and I'm like, "Ah, great. So please tell me how your brand compares to the BBC." Or when I've worked with SME travel clients, and I've said, "Oh, well, Booking.com and Expedia do this," and I'm like, "Okay, great. How many billion are you spending this quarter on brand and on content and marketing?" It's making them parallels work really.
Right. And speaking of which, the SEO ecosphere is pretty broad in order to get everything working together, right? You have, like you've mentioned, content, blogs. There's also working with development teams. There's getting changes out within certain release schedules, things along those natures. Do you feel that the ability to communicate to the C-suite or to those main stakeholders, which may not be necessarily on the SEO side, but do hold the keys to overall SEO success, helps to sway the pendulum a little bit in your favor with making those changes and getting all stakeholders on board?
Yeah, absolutely. I think through that communication system framework, however you want to kind of go around it or phrase it, it's about getting that shared buy-in that ultimately, yeah, engineering and dev might have a certain set of objectives, KPIs to hit for a quarter, but ultimately, same as do marketing, as do sales, it all contributes towards the same end goal, which is the
Mhm.
overall business KPI. So being able to tie that together really helps. A good example of this last year, we still are working with a large US collectibles retailer. So like Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, etc., that kind of stuff.
Right.
And they were having large technical issues in basically indexing and consistent indexing of product pages. So every time Google seemed to sneeze or do an update, all their products dropped out of the index. The reason was because JavaScript, basically, in a sentence, JavaScript, um, put in place a custom rendering solution. And even in that element of, yeah, we need to actually do this, we need to do some form of dynamic rendering, we need to get this working. I was having conversations with the CMO who was saying things like, "Oh, so once we implement this," and this was with the VPM engineering as well, "Oh, we'll get our rankings back." And I'm like, it'll still take time, and you probably still might not get everything back, but you still need to do this kind of thing." And trying to at least set the expectation. I mean, thankfully, I think 90% of them did get indexed and have come back fully. as the product portfolio evolves. But it's about it's not being afraid to actually say no, this won't work as you expect it to, but it has to be done to work. Full stop. And engineering then understood the ask and understood what the end objective was. It wasn't just a random ticket going into the Jira. They understood what the payoff was to their development efforts and the perceived ROI. And then the wider business also understood. So, like for product merchandisers, the buying team, the sales team understood that this effort was a multi-unit push within a business to really contribute towards that end goal. And I think especially with technical, sometimes we're too afraid to I say too afraid, sometimes we don't get the buy-in from clients is probably the better way of phrasing it, where
Right.
we are just relegated to a Jira ticket and developers coming back because they've read something on Stack Overflow or I mean one of the best things about the SEO community is you're never short of a counter opinion if you look hard enough online or Google. And it's
Yes.
just about making that balance, but building a business case. And if you've already got an open communication flow with engineering, with product, with sales, with C level, with VP, it does help smooth that along quite a bit.
Hmm. Excellent. Excellent. And you talked about like some of the counterpoints that are available online, and then also um, some of the sales emails or sales jargon, which someone on C-suite may find in their LinkedIn inbox and then pass along internally. Um, what are some ways of combating such misinterpretations of SEO that have worked well for you and Salt Agency?
I think it comes down to relationship. And
Hmm.
I mean, okay, I say it comes down to relationship. Relationship's half a battle. The other half is actually either delivering results or actually delivering the vision of a program alongside that. Uh, a good case in point being I work with another retailer in the US who worked with now for about 5 years. Um, I know the SEO manager there quite well. Like we DM each other random reels on Instagram and things like that. It's a proper relationship.
Right.
Um, their program of change when they moved on to a new platform 5 years ago, it was clear it was going to be a 2 3 year program based on the amount of changes going in the business. We've been now working 5 years, and it's not just looking short term, but to the long term. And to your point, whenever a business is doing successful, there's always going to be the SEO emails, the sales things, and we were no strangers to that. So actually, early this year, the SEO manager was emailed by somebody else in the SEO space, actually based over in the US, and the SEO manager just basically screenshotted the email to me, sent it over with the caption "lol" underneath it, and we actually had a joke about it a little bit. But it's even like when people know you're working with someone and they're ready to call you out. I think the email said something like, "How is Dan Taylor going to do less with more this year?" or something like that. And it's just like
Hmm.
it's going to happen. It's going to happen in this space because end of the day, salespeople need to sell. But having that relationship, or having someone or an organization bought in to the program that you're trying to actually put out or implement goes a long way to kind of shielding from that, especially if you can't take somebody on the yellow brick road, at least have it paved and people can see the end, for want of a better metaphor.
Nice. So, uh, how large is Salt Agency?
We're about 40 people,
Okay.
40 people.
And a lot of what we've talked about today has been how you built the relationship, right, with the C-suite. You personally texting memes back and forth and reels and whatever it may be. What are some tips you may have with agency owners on kind of taking that same mentality and having it being part of the overall agency culture? Because you can't deal with every single question that comes across or whatever it may be. How do you work with your team members to make sure that everyone's on the same page and this same positive mentality is trickles down throughout the company?
No, great question. I mean, I kind of say we're quite fortunate. We work with a lot of really nice clients and actually just nice people.
Hmm.
Um, we try to build in that when we have weekly, bi-weekly, monthly cadences with clients, when in our interactions, it's having sincerity and it's actually having a human touch with it. I mean, I worked in house before I moved agency side, and I've had the weekly PDF sent to me with a rundown, and then a 20-minute call weekly, and it's just been reading the PDF, and it's been like, okay, this has been pretty cold and impersonal. This was great, and that works in some account management formats. And to be honest, some clients want that. They want quick, let me know what I need to know, then out kind of stuff. Even if I've built those relationships with points of contacts and clients and stakeholders and things like that, we even at all stages, I've tried to bring other people in with that. So then I eventually move away from being that main point of contact altogether, and other people have those same relationships. Um, I'm not. If somebody wants to have a weekly call and we spend the first 5-10 minutes talking about their kids, talking about the weather, talking about, I mean, well, Thanksgiving just having gone. Most of the conversations I have this week are basically, how was it? Like, how was it seeing all the family? How was it seeing all the family? And yeah, trying to kick on from there really, and actually just not make it 100% focused on the graph. Now, obviously, as I said, some points of contact want just that in, out, let me know what I need to know, and that's it kind of done. But having that personality and personal touch to it does go a long way.
Very good, very good. And it seems like, when you're talking about your clients, a lot of different companies that you work with, if we take Cloudflare and a lot of tech solutions and put them to the side, and we focus on e-commerce and travel, those are some incredibly aggressive spaces, dependent upon what you're selling on the e-commerce side, and then of course what you're doing on the travel side, because you're not only competing with others in the organic, but you're competing with paid, and you're competing with Google themselves, and you're competing with the changes Google is making to the overall search landscape, so to speak. What are some of the changes that you've seen throughout the year in ecom, especially now that we're past Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and getting into the urgent shopping season, and then also on the travel side as well. But if we could start with the ecom first, I think it'd be fantastic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think, well, what Google's done for e-commerce, especially around what I refer to them as more static products. So products it's
Mhm.
very, very familiar with. So good example of a collectibles client. If someone searches for a Charizard Pokemon card, there is no variance apart from maybe which season, what's sorry, set print it is. Like, it's not like a white T-shirt. There's very little product variance between it. So Google's very certain of what it can show, very certain of how it can filter, and it's a very lovely data set industry. So the SERP provide is horrendous in the US at the moment with all the product filters. What we kind of seen with that is it's essentially that kind of battleground, which we previously had in search for want of a better phrase as a battleground, is sort of being lost. Now it's understanding what the impact of that's going to be, whether or not it's going to be a major impact, minor impact, or if the impact overall is going to be redistributive. So we're not actually going to see an impact to clicks, we're not going to see an impact to brand visibility, but the user attention is just going to be redistributed elsewhere. It's a similar thing we're probably going to see with SGE, measuring the impact across three measures. To kind of mitigate around that, is trying to better understand, especially what we've been trying to do with ecom, is the structure around what the actual user journey is. So this is kind of moving
Right.
away from not but moving away from keyword intent. I like keyword intent, but I kind of feel again we're focusing on the SEO side and not the user and the business case. So we know when a user searches, I like to class, well, in ecom I class them as two searchers. You've got a shopper and you've got a purchaser. So your shopper is the person who's literally shopping around. They're wanting best running shoes for uh, gravel trails, best hiking boots for, I don't know, cold weather, depending where you are in the US, things like that. They're clearly looking for a product. They have a commercial intent, but they're still shopping around. So they're very
Right.
susceptible to research, for susceptible information. So it's about understanding at this point. We can have Going back to, we can have a white t-shirt and we can say whatever we want about the white t-shirt on our site. But what are the other touch points that the user and ultimately the customer we want is having? Other sites saying differently have, I don't know, this is how little I know about men's fashion. GQ published a article about the necklines of white t-shirts. What other influences, sorry, are these users having on them in that shopping process? So then that funnels them down to obviously being a purchaser, where they're like, right, I want a V-neck white t-shirt in a relaxed fit. They're very focused, and it's about then how can we appear for that. And obviously, Google Shopping and the new Google search is going to be pretty restrictive in that, but how can we have as many touch points along that journey and
Hmm.
influence that as much as possible? So that's something we've been trying to work with, and especially with the Google's hidden gems things trying to surface, and especially yesterday, the whole focus on what seems to be authorship is back, which
Yeah.
no one probably saw coming. It's about trying to bring in what unique modifiers we can into the actual product pages themselves. So, can we potentially, when we're collecting reviews around products, can we be suggestive in the questioning? If somebody's like, if you bought a lawnmower, for example, rather than saying, "No, can you write us a review?" We can do a, "How did you?" I mean, if it's a ride-on lawnmower, how did you find the ride comfort? Did you like
Oh,
how quiet it was? Did you like the battery capacity and the runtime? Asking questions like that, just so that users can start to seed the things we want into reviews, because
hmm.
Google's looking at reviews, it's picking up on sentiments, it's picking out key points. So let's try to feed that. The other flip side to that as well is we can turn around and say, oh, would you agree that the ride-on lawnmower had a fantastic battery life for large yards? Yes, no, simple tick box. And then in your marketing and your messaging, as well as your content, you can literally say 96% of buyers agreed that this has fantastic runtime,
Mm.
because we all see it in general advertising. So let's just leverage the words, leverage the sentiment, and leverage the, I don't want to say the topics, the entities in it, but the descriptors for the
Right.
entities, so that we can just feed more data through schema and feed more data to Google for it to process and rise to the top a bit more. And that's something we've been working on quite hard. And I'm hoping off the back of the September Health Content Update, we'll see that start to be more positively impactful off the back of that in the efforts we're doing.
Yeah, I really like the specific oh my gosh, specificity in the review questions. That makes a lot of sense. Because if not, you things like, oh, this lawnmower was great. This lawnmower was awesome. This is my favorite lawnmower. And then like how was the ride? How did this work? How did this work for you? You get people entering a much more specific, longer review, and it also reminds me of the question and answer area that we see within Amazon PDPs as well, which are very specific, right? You get a lot of questions that are featured, a lot of answers coming either from other consumers or from the company themselves, and it really helps to not only not only you feeding Google much more natural language queries with the question and answer component to what you have in the reviews on your site, but that can also help think of ideas on what to add from an FAQ perspective, or also what to showcase based upon where someone is within that journey, and also help with a content strategy approach too, which is something that I really like. Um, I did take a moment to search Google for Charizard Pokemon card, and um, a couple of things I'd like to bring up here are first of all, we see that all the filters on the left side, filtered by on sale, get it fast, use, small business, etc., etc. Filtered by stores, which default to eBay, Amazon, Walmart, and then tcgplayer.com. So you have the three major e-com companies here that are showcased, and then maybe one specific uh, card collectible card company. But the thing that sticks out to me the most is that first I have the Google Shopping sponsored carousel at the top of the page that ranges from a $15 pack of cards from Walmart to a $29,500 1999 Pokemon first edition of Charizard from eBay. But then as I scroll down, I see that eBay is listed number one in the organics, with a Google Pay encrypted checkout, um, rich snippet, which is kind of cool. Then I see about, let's see, 18 different product images that are synced with stores. Then about two more rows of Google Shopping sponsored listings, a call to action from Google to save with deals in apparel and electronics and more to shop deals. Then we see Pokemon.com, Amazon, and then about three or four videos from YouTube. So with Google adding not only so many different sponsored listings, right? Because I see about, let's see, maybe 18 different sponsored listings for Charizard cards, uh, not just above the fold, but mid page as well. We're seeing the images, we're seeing the videos. How much does all of that play into your overall SEO strategies when we're not just looking at basic listings anymore? We're looking at rich media, we're looking at YouTube videos, we're looking at uh, people also ask component. We're looking at Google suggesting specific stores in the results as well. How does that play into your overall strategy to cover those bases and kind of connect the dots, so to speak?
Yeah, no, that's a. I mean, it's a broad question, but it is a. So I mean, to go with Charizard specifically, I think our approach to that was probably threefold. So the other thing which I think would be interesting as well, I don't know if it's triggered for you on that. Right at the top, underneath the search bar in the filter pills, do you have the simple search icon as well?
I do not
Ah,
on my
So
end.
one thing that Google has started to test, which I fortunately seem to be able to trigger every single time, while other people it's hit and miss, is where Google usually has the images, videos, the typical filters at the top. It started to introduce simple search, capital S on both, so it's a nice noun. When users click on that, it reverts back to the old, more classical search that we're used to, with more blue links and less
Oh,
interjections.
interesting. Yeah.
It's we're clearly testing it. We're clearly seeing what people want to use. So approach to basically Charizard and products like that. One, um, work and understand how you can get into that kind of left-hand filter side. So through entity relations, schema markup, ultimately as well to be in that side. Our thought process was, well, the products need to be indexed, and we need to show that we have a catalog to support this query because Google very clearly understands what's going on. So objective one, get listed in my sidebar of four, um, which was free at the time. Then understanding working with a pay team, so essentially saying, right, free merchant center, all the shopping results are coming through. This is very heavily now shopping. We need to make sure we're present at least there, um, and just work that. But then the second one, as you've seen, it has got eBay, but then it has got Pokemon.com further down. It's got YouTube videos, it's got mixed media. It's how can we create and redistribute content in a way so even if we're not putting or one of our actual card listings isn't first, how can we get brand visible on that page? And if we are selected as a link, how can our product page, which I'm going to be honest, in this space, every product page is named off the same. It's the card title, all the flavor text, and all the text on the cards repeated on the product page amongst prices. So how can we create a differentiator? So across a lot of these, I spoke about this at Brighton last year. Was this concept we had called champion products, where there might be, I'm going to hazard a guess, it was 20 plus different prints of Charizard now in terms of sets, amount of cards. We want one static one, which we can try to get ranked consistently visible all the time. So we put unique text on that, which is user reviewed, user written, and it adds that kind of perspective element to that PDP. So if Google is going to pick from something else, it's got a better candidate than what competitors will have to rank for as well. So it's play the game with a surf and get into that sidebar, which we achieved. Play the game and see how we can mitigate across the different content types, and then take the long shot of being the absolute best plan B result possible to get featured and rotated in and out if Google and when Google chooses to.
Makes total sense. Makes total sense. And it'll be really interesting to see the changes Google keeps testing through this holiday shopping season and what they keep and what they don't afterwards as well.
I particularly dislike the almost banner ad style CTA that they're sticking in to those results now, which you called out as well. The nice CTA of it just feels very unorganic, if that's right, inorganic, one of the two.
It does. It definitely does. What about on the travel side? Specifically flights. Uh, what are you seeing there? That's a big change or something that you've had to adopt to. You know what's funny is I just clicked on the shop deals link and it takes me completely out of the Charizard experience and it's recommending skincare, shirts and tops, pants, bedroom furniture, everything else. So it's almost like I've gone to this, yeah, I've basically gone to the shop deals homepage when I was originally intending on looking for a Pokemon card. So not only does it look bad, this static shop deals area within Google, but it takes me to a completely unrelated page.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think at this stage we shouldn't be expecting polished products from Google until they even after they've rubber stamped it. There's still some janky gremlins in the system with it, but
Yeah, yeah, there
yeah,
sure are. There sure are.
but
And again, how about changes and adaptations that have been made on the travel side
yeah. So I
this
mean,
past year?
in similarities, kind of what we've done with e-commerce, but what we're seeing, especially because obviously Google's been in travel for a lot longer. It went around, bought all the data. It's had full hotel and flights, bars on there. They produced a lot of their own travel content as well around cities. They've really leaned into that as a market. One thing we noticed very early on was it was using, I think probably even more ahead of e-commerce and other SERPs, it was better understanding call outs and sentiments in reviews in travel a lot earlier. So that's when we started with the suggestive questioning and so not suggestive question, yeah, suggestive questions in terms of if we knew a specific hotel or resort had issues or flights had issues with leg room or road noise or even things like elevators not working.
Hmm.
Um, we made sure that these were combated when we send out the review questions. Oh, what did you think about the level of road noise? What did you think about the leg room? How did you find the in-flight service? And let's try to counter it by actually getting people responding positively to it. And we've seen correlations with that,
Hmm.
especially in terms of how highly these are being featured in Google's own kind of products, as well as what we can get ranked, but also with one eye to the future, especially towards SGE and how that performs. A good example, I've got a friend who he works for a company that runs airport lounges. And we just went onto SGE and I put, what are brand name lounges like? And it just came up with a little synopsis. I mean, it's airport lounges. The internet doesn't write about them that much. So there was a couple of sentences, and then what people think. And there was one bullet point under this, and it literally said, people find these lounges overcrowded, noisy, and often unavailable. And he was like, right, well, this is our trust pilot says nothing like that. Our own reviews say nothing like that. So it was like, right, reverse engineer where it's getting this information, found the
Hmm.
source. So then he's like, right, you need to seriously go on a leading question or suggest question embarkment here, because if I'm a modern user and I'm looking at paying $40, $50 for a lounge and I see that, that's my journey with your brand done. I'm probably not
Right.
going to search for that again. So with travel, I think that's gonna be more impactful than it is potentially with e-commerce and other sectors because I mean in the UK we have a little bit of a I say a running joke. If a certain courier is listed as the delivery partner for certain e-commerce stores, that does have a percentage decline in the number of people checking out because they don't like the courier. That's a fun one for Twitter afterwards if you want to go through that, or X, whatever it's called now. But if you're booking a holiday, that's a high value purchase with low order frequency.
Yeah.
So having one negative thing put you off it, that's probably worth 2-3 grand and probably future sale as well, because once another brand or another provider gets the customer and provides a positive experience, it costs more to acquire somebody from an existing brand than it is to capture them at that first instance.
Yes.
Um, so it's very much about being proactive in covering blind spots. And that's what we're seeing more with travel. I think Google's probably at its limit of what it can do to that sector now, outside of just making their own like actual private firm in booking and just dominating the surf and then having a monopoly trial against them. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's pretty much there. I think in terms of that, it's just what threat AI is going to bring to it, especially around brand. And I'm also very curious to see, because it's curated a lot of its own travel content, when people are looking for not necessarily the flights and hotels, but things to do in Milan, for example, as a query, where you've got a
Yeah.
lot of tour providers who will rank for it, a lot of actual entertainment venues, things that thrive off actually being aware and having that awareness. Will it start to favour its own things to do content, but it has its travel hub over what it's got on the internet? And that's going to be, for me, that's the most interesting payoff of what we're potentially going to see in travel there.
Yeah, I like the entire concept of identifying the talking points that you're seeing pop up in SGE results, and then addressing them with the suggestive questions. Right. That makes that's a great takeaway from this entire conversation. Is what what does Google, to the best of our ability, think about the company? Where are they getting this content from, and how can you combat or replace that, or just address that with the reviews that you're doing yourself? Which review companies do you work with the sites that you that which review solutions on the sites that you work with do you typically find are best for setting up those suggestive questions?
I mean, any that allow, I mean, most of them that we work with allow the ability to actually form questions. Like Yotpo, Reviews.io, for example, they do it pretty well. I work with a lot of companies who have a lot of brick and mortar stores still, and when they get the Google link through, they just pass that through and they have their own email solution that we can customize and go out. It's just old, not the Mailchimp, but the old things like Silverpop, IBM, and all the rest of it. I mean, it's relatively easy to set up. Um, Only like the more rigid email solutions like that aren't really enterprise or that businesses wouldn't really use. I think even like inbuilt ones like Spotify, not Spotify, Shopify can do it as well. Yeah, I think that works pretty well in that sense. The other thing on that, when you're collecting reviews as well, not just looking at the blind spot, 'cause one thing you just mentioned there is also understanding how Google understands your brand as the first option or first step,
Mm.
and then understand what it talks about. I was talking to a Swedish fintech company about a month ago, and when we just looked at their SGE exposure, Google wasn't 100% sure who they were as a brand. They had, I mean, it wasn't a common word, but there was about 6 or 7 companies with that part of their brand being pulled through. So
Right.
it kind of understood, oh, we think you mean this fintech company, we think you mean this recruitment company, etc. So when we actually finally managed to have it say, oh, this is the company, this is a Swedish fintech company based in Stockholm, then underneath it, when it tried to do the reviews thing, it says, this is what people are saying about when it had branded in quotation marks on the internet. And it pulled through 3 negative reviews, but they were from a recruitment company of the same name, not
Uh,
that company at all. So it's first actually it's quite humbling to actually then look back and go, oh, you're 7, 8 years old and Google hasn't got a clue who you are versus a recruitment company in Germany. Um, let's work on this first, then let's worry about suggestive questions and everything else first. So I think that's going to be a fun thing. I say fun thing, especially the SME challenger market with SGE and just not having somebody else's negative reputation impacting you, but being aware of it and directly addressing it.
That makes total sense. That makes total sense. And now I want to go through most of the brands that I work with that do not have unique names and see what Google's picking up and what they're mixing them up with as well. Excellent.
Yeah.
Dan, where can our viewers and listeners find you online?
No, great. So people can connect with me on LinkedIn. I know my name's Dan Taylor, so it's pretty common, but I'm sure I'm probably the only bearded glasses wearing one on there, so you'll probably find me quite easily. If not, salt.agency is web address. I'm also online at dantaylor.online, and I'm on Twitter /X / whatever it's going to be called next month. So it's Taylor Dan RW.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Dan, it's really been a pleasure. Pleasure talking to you. Thanks for staying up so late and doing this recording. Thanks again to Channable and Wix for sponsoring today's show. Dan, is there anything you'd like to say or plug before we sign off?
If I got a chance to plug, we have just released a new Google business profile management tool called Mirador Local. You can check that out at miradorlocal.com. It's currently got a few cool product releases coming up. So yeah, if you work with a lot of local businesses or manage a lot of multi-locations or profiles, it's worth checking out.
Mirador Local. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Dan. Thanks for jumping on the SEJ show today, sharing some of your experiences with working with C-suite, different non-SEO stakeholders, communicating throughout the company, and then also some of what you've been seeing on the e-commerce and the travel side going into 2024. It's going to be a really interesting year, I believe, on the Google side.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right. Cheers. Cheers. Have a good one.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Search Engine Journal Show. If you liked this episode, subscribe to our channel for so much more and click the notification bell so you don't miss a thing.